Hi there, it's Kit Cassingham with Live in Focused Energy yet again. Tonight's live stream number 35 is about, I'm calling it acceptance action. The questions to ask yourself are when to stay silent, when to rail and make a deal of it, when do you act, when do you be still. I have a story that will help illustrate at least one example for me of a time when I went from railing against the wrong thing to acting on the right thing. My husband and I recently swapped office spaces. I had an office in the house, he had an office in the house next door that we bought to be his office because he had an assistant and lots of needs with packing supplies and inventory and things like that. And that worked well for years. But with changing markets, he's doing more electronic products, and so his need for the packing room and the inventory reduced. His assistant is part-time and only here at the office a few hours a week. So he was officing at the house in the dining room. He has ADD. He's easily distractible. He's not an organized man. And the piles over the dining room table, sometimes I'd have to carve out a space just to have a meal at the dining room table. I begged, pleaded, threatened everything I could to get him to go work up at the office. That's where he belonged. And to quit piling things in the pantry, in the dining room, and everywhere. He could make his messes at the office, was my logic. Well, you know what? It turns out he didn't enjoy the space up at the office. He really wanted to have his office at home. So one day we decided we would swap. I love the space up here. Now, I have worked from home for 25, 30 years. So it's taken a little adjustment, but I love it. So I went from railing against his mess and his chaos and taking over the house to accepting that's the space where he should be. And I'm just as happy here as I was there. And I don't have to do so many household chores when I'm not there. Double win for me. So that is a quick example of what happens when you don't have presence of mind to accept the right things, to know what to accept. I mentioned some time ago about Twig Island. We call our office space the Twig because it's too small to be a branch office. And with the arrangement of the driveway and our lane, it's like a little island of meadow and trees. And so it's in the sun. I have a 1/4-mile circuit around the island. So during my 10-minute breaks, I can walk around once or twice, depending on how else I want to spend my 10 minutes. I've moved out of my cave and onto my island. I love it! All right. Acceptance. You've heard the Serenity Prayer. That's all about acceptance. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I've shared one story where we got serenity because we identified what we couldn't change and what we could, and we understood the difference and acted. In general, though, it seems to me that the world is a little upside down and backwards about this. And I think that this upside down, backwards approach to life is rooted in fear and apathy. Yep, fear and apathy. What can you change in your environment? Well, you can change social injustice, even if it's one person at a time. You can change your attitude, you can change your habits, you can change your behaviors. What can't you change? Well, you can't change the past. You can't change other people. You can't change airline schedules, whether they're on or off or canceled. You can't change the weather. Where are you putting your energy? Huh? I heard a story many years ago, which was in the first time I heard the Serenity Prayer. A young man was talking about how he was on an airplane and he had an important meeting to get to. And the plane got delayed, one delay after another. And he was getting antsy and edgy and angry and starting to fuss and fume and snap at the flight attendants. And the guy next to him was calm. He had a keynote speech to give, but he just stayed mellow. And the young man turned to him finally and said, "How is it you can stay so calm when the airlines are screwing us over so bad?" And that's when the young man heard the Serenity Prayer. And he strives, at least at that time many years ago, he made that part of his daily practice. So do you rail against the things you can't change? Have you noticed that the people who snap and snarl at customer service, at flight attendants, the people who can help them, don't get the good service that the people who are kind, generous, helpful, what they get? So back to the question of where do you put your energy? Too many people do rant and rave and rail against things that they cannot change. And the sad thing is that they make themselves and those around them just absolutely miserable. And then they don't have the time or energy to change the things they can change, can have an impact on. Does that make any sense to you? Fear and apathy. What are you afraid of? When you see injustice in the world, are you afraid to act? Do you look the other way? Are you apathetic and think, I can't make a difference, so I won't bother? Or you don't even see it because you're so apathetic or afraid? That's pathetic. And we all do that at some point or another, some time or another. Another example of apathy. When the diabetic, and it's kind of a form of denial, but when the diabetic continues to eat sugar and not exercise and expect things to change, that is apathy. That's really not accepting what's going on. That's a passive-aggressive, letting it just flow. A story of where acceptance can work for you. Maybe, we'll see. I am hypothyroid and have been for many years. And since the day I was diagnosed with it, I have been told, there's nothing we can do about it. Here's your thyroid medication. Take it every day and come back in a year. We'll see how your numbers are. And that's once my numbers get stabilized. From the beginning, I have refused to accept there's nothing we can do about it. I do accept the fact that we don't know enough, we being modern medicine and science, don't know enough about how to make that change. But I know there has to be a way. So I'm being active, proactive in working on my diet, my exercise, my attitude. And no, it hasn't fixed itself yet. It hasn't changed. Though I suspect my medication's a little lower than it was several years ago. But I know I'm happier and healthier. That sounds like a win to me. And if I have to take this stuff anyway, why rail against it? And why not look for that solution, at least for me, to make it better? So what is the solution to learning to accept the things you can't change and to change the things you can? How do you know the difference? Well, to a certain extent, this is an exercise in mindfulness and presence. But I have created the concept of the decision filter. Life measures into a coffee filter, or a tea filter if you prefer, situations and events. The situations and events that flow through that filter are things you can't change, so let them flow away. The things that stick in there, stay there. Those are the things you can change. Those are the things you can work on. Now, whether you choose to work on them or not, that's a different topic. And if you find yourself coming up with excuses why that doesn't apply to you, why that's wrong, why that should flow away with other things, then you're dancing with ants and it's time to pull out the raid. You remember raid? Reframe. Oh, let's see if I can remember raid. I can't because I put myself on the spot. So I'll look real quick. Reframe. Alternate solution. Inquire and decide to be positive. That's what helps you deal with the things that stick in the filter. You may decide to deal with them later or delegate them. You may decide to ignore them. That is a different discussion for another day. But the things that flow away, that left that cone, why do you continue to play with them? They're gone. They're not yours to deal with. More ants, more raid. So apply the decision filter to your life. When something happens, can you change it? No? Then let it go. You still can change your attitude and your reaction to the situation. And that's what I hope you will do. Fear and apathy are at the root of accepting the wrong things and not accepting the right things, or not accepting the wrong things. Action helps move you through the fear and the apathy. Action is a wonderful mode of operation. That's why I'm calling this acceptance action. Don't act on the things you can't impact, but do act on the things you can. You might be so afraid, but when you act, you get more courage, more backbone, more confidence. I'm Kit Cassingham with Live in Focused Energy. Go out and live your life with more focused energy and empower yourself with mindful balance. I will see you again tomorrow night. Take care in the meantime.